So now let's create our first service from this particular monolithic application. And the service which we're going to build now is your question service. So first of all, if you want to build this, of course, we have to create a new project. And in the entire series, we're not going to work with one project. We'll be having multiple projects. So every microservice is one project in IntelliJ or any IDE which you use. Right? So there might be some confusion where which service I'm using. So the recommended way would be to practice along the video so that you will not get confused. If you're just watching a video and then when I'm switching between the projects, you will get confused. So when you're doing it by yourself, you will know on which IDE I'm into, right? And also observe here, this is where the application name is also there. So we are into quiz application. Now, once we create a new project, this will also change. So what I will do is I will create a new project. So let me go to the same website, which is start.spring.io. And here, the project which you're going to select is Maven type. And the language is Java 3.1.1. This is the version I'm selecting. I'm not going for any snapshot version. And based on when you are watching this video, you can select any stable version. Okay, group ID, I want to make sure this is com.Telusko. And the artifact ID is, now since we are building a question service, so we'll say question service, okay? And then we can give the description here, so that's it. So we are building a question service basically here. Now, as I mentioned before, there are different services which are going to build, right? We have a quiz service and a question service. Here, we have to add some dependencies. Now, what are dependencies we need? So first of all, we need web because that's a web project. We also need Postgres because we are building, we are connecting with the database as well. We need Lombok because we don't want to write much of the code. We want to get some code from the Lombok for the data setters. And since we are connecting with database with the help of JPA, so I will also need JPA. Now this is something which we have used before as well, right? Nothing new here. Now what is new? The thing is, when you are building the entire project, we need two more dependencies. One is your OpenFin. And again, I will not describe what this does at this point. We'll talk about this later. And next we need is Eureka client, okay? Again, why do we need all those things? We'll discuss that later. At this point, just say we have those two things. And once I download the project, I will basically going to comment it. Now I'm getting it is because in future, we will need those dependencies and instead of copying them, we can simply uncomment it, right? So at this point, just ignore it. But when you are trying this on your machine, also get this, comment it as I'm doing, and then we can get forward. Okay, now, after this, we'll simply click on generate. I'm just checking if everything is good, looks good. I will click on generate. Now it will give me a project in zip format. I will simply unzip it. So unzipping done, let me go back to my IntelliJ. And here, I will open the project. So I will say open. So basically we are into that particular file now and our project, which is unzipped. You can see question service and click on open. Now this time we'll do it in a new window because I want to use the existing window as well, the existing project. So you can click on new window. Now if you're using Eclipse, in Eclipse basically you just have to import the project. In one Eclipse you can see multiple projects on the left hand side. So that's fine, whichever IDE we are using. So I will just click on the new window. In fact, I will say don't ask me again because all the project which I'm going to create will be opening in the new window. Now when we do that, this is the new window, right? Now if you can see, okay, let it load first. So basically you can see the project name here, which is question service. Now if I switch back to other project, this is quiz app. Okay, just remember, this is quiz app, this is question service. Okay, so this is monolithic and this is the microservice. So it's downloading the dependency, which will take some time. Okay, looks like dependencies has been downloaded. If I click on Maven, there's no problem here. Everything looks clean. And then if I expand the external libraries, you can see, I think we got all the libraries required. But as I mentioned before, we don't need those two dependencies at this point, right? So I will go back to the POM file, where you have all the dependency mentioned, and I can simply comment these two things. I don't need Eureka server. I don't need OpenFin at this point. So comment it out. And everything else will need that, okay? So we are just commenting it. What next? Now, of course, I can build the entire project by typing, but since we have already done that work, right? So what I will do is when you go back to your src and main, you can see Java is actually empty. We only have one thing here, which is the question service application. Now in this, I will need all those things. Of course, we'll make some changes to make it more like a microservices, an individual service or an independent service, basically. So what I will do is I will go back to my project And you can see in this particular project, which we have done before, we had all these things, right? We have a controller in which you had a question controller, quiz controller. At this point, what I will do is I will just copy this entire stuff and paste in here. So you can see we got all the things. And actually, we don't need all things. So if you see controller, we don't need quiz controller in this. This is basically a microservice for question. So delete. In DAO also, we don't need quiz DAO because the moment you say quiz DAO, that means we have the same database. No, we want to use two different databases, right? And in fact, let me also do that once I delete all these things. So let me delete, we will need question wrapper, and we'll need response as well. We don't need quiz, so we'll delete that. Again, we'll discuss why do we need question wrapper and response later. And in the service, again, we don't need quiz service, so we'll delete that as well. So delete and done. Okay, so you can see we have deleted it. Of course, this project will not work because we have deleted so many things. And one more thing, since we have made the changes in the POM, remember we have commented the things here. So we have to reload this. You have to remember, whenever you make some changes in the POM file, you need to reload your changes. And once I do that, you can see now it looks good. We don't need POM file anymore now. Let's close it. Now these are the things. Now one more thing, we need to also create a separate database for the quiz, right? Now since we are not working on quiz, we are only working with questions. So let's create the quiz database later, okay? I thought we'll create, but it doesn't make sense now. We are only working on question service. So let's only focus on question service. Now here, if you go back to your controller, of course you have all these things and we have to import the package, lengthy things, right? So now since the thing is, we have changed this name, right? The quiz app, and that's the issue. So no issue. I will quickly import everything. The reason I'm not cutting this part of the video is because I think you should know how do we import something if something is not there. Import done, question DAO. I don't think there is an issue, or there's an issue of this import. So let me import the question class as well. And let me go back to question. Is it dependent on anything? Nothing. Looks good. Question wrapper, dependent on nothing. Looks good. Response, dependent on nothing. Looks good. Question service. Now it is dependent on a lot of different things. Let me remove the imports, which is not making sense. And let's do the import here. Question DAO, question. And then if you go down, things are looking good here. Okay, one more file which we forgot to import is this, the application.properties, which is empty at this point. So what I will do is I will just go back to my previous project. Application properties we'll need all these things. So we'll copy this and paste it here, right? So all these things we needed, this is basically for Postgres database connectivity, right? We need to mention the driver, we need to mention which database we are working with, which is QuestionDB, the Postgres username, the password for the DDL update for the database table creation, and then dialect. Okay, nothing to change here, but we'll keep it open. I don't need wrapper response at this point, so I will close them. Question also, I don't need it now. Let me focus only on the controller. Now, what are the changes we need to do here? The thing is, in the earlier scenario, maybe I think we should first run this to check if everything is working with this settings. We just need to say get all questions. Let's see if this works. Run. Okay, yes, I need Lombok. Okay, no problem. You can see service started on 8080. So let me go back to my browser and say localhost 8080/all questions. So it is working. You can see we got all the questions. But now we have also mentioned that we want to make this as an independent service. At this point in the earlier project, everything was mixed up, right? Everything was there in one project. But now we want to make it different. So in the question controller, we have to add some more requests. So what are the things we need? So what we will need is, I will just write comments here first. So first of all, we need to find a way to generate the quiz. The thing is, in the earlier scenario, the quiz was responsible to generate questions, right? But then it also needs access to the question database. We don't want that now. The quiz service will not be having access to the question database, which is in two different servers. So if question service needs a quiz, it is the job of your question service to generate it. So basically, quiz service will request to the question service, hey, give me questions. The question service will say, okay, let me give you the questions, and it will generate the questions. So basically, I need to have a method here called generate or create, your choice. So I can say generate. This is one thing. This one thing URL we have to work on. Next, we need to also get the question for a particular quiz. Let's say we have a quiz database, right? A quiz service quiz database. In the quiz database, it will have its own data about the quiz, but it will not have data about the questions, right? For the questions, it has to go to the question service. So what if your quiz service says, hey, I have the quiz number, but I don't have a questions for it. Give me the questions. So maybe we have to find a way to give them the questions based on the quiz ID or based on the question ID, because we don't have the quiz ID, right, on the question database. Okay, so it should be based on the get questions, but it should be based on the quiz ID. So I'll mention the bracket on the question ID, not quiz ID, question ID. And also now we need to get this score as well. You know why we have to calculate score here? In the earlier project, we basically calculated the score in the quiz service, if you remember. If you go down, this is where we have calculated the results. Now we don't want to do that in the quiz service, because in the question service, we have all the questions. Even the right answers is there with the questions. So in that case, we need to do that here. So we'll say get score. So these three things we have to implement in the question service to make it independent. Now, how to do that, that we'll see in the next video.